Endeavours of Sherlock Holmes, The Camberwell Poisoning Case, is copyright 2016 by its author Sandor Jay Sonnen. All rights reserved. Endeavours of Sherlock Holmes. 6. The Camberwell Poisoning Case. Part 1. The Jubilee ends. One of the most insidious plots Sherlock Holmes has ever faced was the Camberwell Poisoning Case. Difficult is separating the scorn society levels at cold-blooded murderers from being held in awe by when their plans border on genius. My friend has occasionally reflected, and I have at times captured this reflection within the words of these publications, that if it were not for the occasional demonstration of the criminally minded who are also brilliant, he, Holmes, would be relegated to spending his life in boredom and depression. It was in June of 1887 when I was disturbed by a late-night rapping at my door, made by a young man who had with him a sealed message. Printed on the envelope's reverse side was the name of a personal physician to some of the most important families in the land. Below his name was his residence address, located like so many of his clients, in the very old and very venerable Anglo-Saxon district of Camberwell. Horace Mayton, MD, was a name well regarded for many medical reasons and societal functions. Following his name there were, in fact, more letters beside the two which stood for our profession. From his publications on infectious diseases in metropolitan communities, to his charity work for organising medical exams for those in need, to the wealth he amassed serving many families of importance and notoriety, his name had always been synonymous with the highest respect. Dr. Mayton had, however, sent me the message not to ask my views on a medical matter related to one of his patients, but to reach out to me as a means of getting in touch with my celebrated friend. I was not offended by his approach, as, now and then, someone would begin with me a conversation wherein his genuine interest was an attempt to learn something about what Mr. Sherlock Holmes had been doing recently, or whether I would ask Holmes if he would be able to help the man with some trouble he was having to deal with at the time. Now past midnight, I read the message asking if I was available to come at once to meet with him as soon as possible, and to bring with me my friend. The young man before me was the groomsman of the doctor's private carriage, which was parked on the street. He told me Holmes and I were urgently needed. I dressed in a few minutes and was soon inside Dr. Mayton's private coach and on my way to Baker Street. When we approached Holmes's residence, the noise had disturbed him, and as I alighted, I looked up to see him looking down at me from his open window. I whisper-shouted up at him and said we were urgently needed in Camberwell. In due course, Holmes came down and entered, the groomsman holding the door for him before climbing up to join the coachman, and we were on our way to wherever our destination would be. I told Holmes the note did not say exactly where we were going. He said to me the darkness of the hour and the strangeness of the event was a gift from the heavens, as it had been one of the things he so much desired, the unusual coupled with the element of surprise. I knew Holmes would be excited to hear what Dr. Mayton had to say, yet I still asked him if he had been asleep. "No, not this night," he answered me. "I was writing out some lengthy correspondence related to that Australian insurance business that was just concluded. I was involved tonight in reading a letter from Sub-Lieutenant Robert Torber, who you will remember is stationed in Queensland. I was writing back to him when I heard your carriage echo through the quiet street." Mrs. Hudson shook her head over the household being disturbed, but also noted to me that something like this was more the norm than otherwise. The carriage halted before a handsome mansion, and we walked the few steps to the portico where the door had been opened for us. Mr. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. Holmes spoke to a butler who stood just inside the open door. The butler who had stood before us addressed Holmes. "We would be expected." "Yes, sir," he answered. "Please come this way." We walked through the centre hall to an archway and an open door. This would be the Holmes Library, large and a statement to the community of the power and wealth of its occupants. The side from where we had entered had been lit by more than its share of candles, but beyond As I looked deeper into the great room, I saw on either side of the two principal walls a descent into darkness. Bookshelves ran the full lengths of these walls of the room. The conversation area was a grouping that may have entertained as many as 12, or even more should need have required, all in the finest red baroque satin, fitted to medium, dark oak. But there was another grouping for a more intimate gathering, where a man in a dark suit, sitting on a bench settee, placed his china teacup upon a small table at his side and rose to greet us. "Horace Mayton," he said, before shaking Holmes's hand and then mine. "I would prefer to spend more than a little time discussing the matter, but we probably do not have more than some minutes before the police arrive. Pray take a seat and let me explain to you some facts and the urgency behind what has already become a difficult matter." The man's conversation dropped as he spoke the final words of his brief statement. "Someone has died," said Holmes. "The master, I presume. This is not your home." Dr. Mayton took a breath. "Quite so, Mr. Holmes. This is the home of the Carter estate. We moved from where Dr. Mayton had been sitting, and we seated ourselves on the principal furnishings of the room, two matching long sofas facing one another. The servant who had let us in entered the study and stood by the door. The room became quiet, and Holmes showed himself to be fully engaged in what the man was about to say. And both of us could tell whatever was on the mind of the medical man he was loath to speak of. His sentences implied official action would be required, so he was hemmed into a corner and would have probably wanted more time in the matter. From his serious expression of statement, it was understood that such was not going to be allowed. "Sir Richmond Carter, 6th Baronet, Masterton, died sometime tonight. He was poisoned, and based on what I saw of the body, for I did have some minutes to make a cursory examination of his remains, it appears to be a toxin based in some plant derivative. He was poisoned sometime during yesterday, meaning only a few hours ago, but there are factors related to his death that I will call amazing, and I am not subject to the use of hyperbole. His body was found by his manservant, who is his valet and long-time companion from his service in Scotland. I have known this man for years, and he is as noble in spirit as his master and worthy of service to this household. He is at this moment with Sir Richmond's body, within his lordship's bedchamber, in rooms upstairs. I have known Richmond Carter for all his life. I was one of his father's closest friends. This man, who as I said was Sir Richmond's manservant, is loyal and very discreet, and it would not have occurred to him to contact the police. He sent for me directly, running to my home. He alerted me to urgently come to the residence, and when I arrived, he told me he had not spoken with any of the servants, nor had he attempted to wake them, but believed I would know what to do more than anyone else. Naturally, I cannot fault him in this. It was obvious to him that his master was dead, and there was no emergency procedure that would have saved him. Of course, I tried a few as a matter of course, but I knew they would be of no benefit to Richmond, and that he had expired before I arrived. To believe the valet, Sir Richmond had been dead before he found him in his bedchamber. The valet said he last saw Sir Richmond when he left at about 4 or 4:30 yesterday afternoon. Dr. Mayton gave a sigh before collecting his thoughts. He continued, "The servant knew and expected Sir Richmond would be gone until the evening. That is, he observed him arrive home sometime past 3, then prepare for a short journey, then leave at this 4 or 4:30 time, and with certain baggage he said his master always took for a particular event on this day of the year. Because the event had in the past kept him away for many hours and had always made his master's return unpredictable, he did not mark too carefully that Sir Richmond had not returned home in the early evening, but he expected his master would return home eventually, and had prepared for his return a light supper, perhaps as late as 8 or 9 in the evening, from what the cook had left in the oven for this purpose. This late evening return," Dr. Mayton was slowing his words. He took a moment before continuing. "This late return on the first day of summer was a normal part of Sir Richmond's habits. I don't wish to go into details. I am not the proper person to do so. Perhaps a relation of Sir Richmond's would be best to consult on this matter. Suffice to say, the man knew his master would choose not to attend his club, but would want to have a late meal before retiring. This was not due to it being the second day of the Jubilee's festivities, but because it was the solstice, a day which, for reasons of Carter family history, has an importance all to itself. Holmes and I took a moment to look at one another. I shifted in my chair at this natural break in the statement Dr. Mayton was laying out. At any rate, Weller, here. Dr. Mayton inclined his head toward the butler, who stood beside the archway to the library. Knows that he will soon have to alert Sir Richmond's nephew. That is the eldest of the nephews in line of what has happened. Further decisions of the family and its circumstance should be left to Glendon Carter, Esquire. But I need you to understand this is a family yet undisturbed by what has happened. The baronetcy held by the male line of the Carters is one that is hereditary in nature, though the title is not a peerage. This would make Glendon, Esquire, the presumptive 7th baronet. The Carters are all scattered about Camberwell, and they would naturally be asleep at this time. These family relations who live nearby had been at a large dinner party hosted by a family who are friends of the Carters, this dinner party being also in Camberwell, and they would have returned to their respective homes, probably interested in immediately retiring, as one would presume there would have been drink served there. By what you have just now told us, Dr. Mayton, you mean that Sir Richmond lived here in this mansion alone, and that his relations have their own other homes in the Camberwell district? Yes, Mr. Holmes. Sir Richmond was a bachelor, and by himself. There was no other surviving sibling to live here with him. He never married, nor did he sire any children. Pray continue, said Holmes. Sir Richmond had not returned home for this late meal, and Michaels, this valet and manservant of whom I've mentioned, finally became concerned as time went on, as even due to the strange behaviour his master exhibited each solstice, his not coming home by 9 in the evening was unusual. Michael said he went to his master's bedroom to determine for certain whether Sir Richmond was in fact at home. It would have been irregular, but still in the realm of possibility that Sir Richmond entered the home and went upstairs in a manner that gave Michaels and the staff no notice of his return. Michaels satisfied himself that indeed Sir Richmond was not in his private chamber or anywhere in the home at this 9 o'clock hour. At perhaps 10 or 10:30, Weller and Michaels left their posts in the foyer and searched the ground floor and backyard entirely, which, although it made no sense they do so, they chose to do in mere desperation. Together they walked the perimeter of the large property, and this search proved fruitless. But it will be presumed that it was at this time, that is during this ground floor and exterior search, Sir Richmond found his way into the house, and without alerting either Weller or Michaels, without their assistance, he made his way upstairs to his bedchamber, and there he lay, and there he died. Then, some time after the ground floor and ground search, Michaels returned upstairs to look in his master's chamber, and there he found him. Michaels came to my home just past 11, and nearly woke me up as I was at the point of going upstairs myself. It had been a long 2 days as I, like most of London and perhaps all of England, turned the one-day celebration into 2 full days of social gathering. This, of course, mirrored the events of Her Majesty, who had a second day of events beyond the anniversary of her coronation. I believe I am correct on that point. Most of our subjects throughout the kingdom spent Monday in full celebration in her honour, during what was the actual day of her 50th anniversary as sovereign, then spent yesterday, Tuesday, in a state of minimal work and continued festivities. The second day of her celebration became ours also, if I may put it that way. Yes, said Holmes. I was at my home for both days, and had barricaded myself into my rooms and avoided the outside world. Yet from what I saw looking from my window, throughout Monday and yesterday, it is fair to say that the Jubilee was 2 full days of events, and not the one specific coronation remembrance. And this place Sir Richmond practised this solstice event of his, of which you are being vague, that was also yesterday, the exact day of the solstice itself, which merely by coincidence fell on the second day of Her Majesty's festivities. Well, yes, Mr. Holmes, it is, I suppose, only a coincidence that the second day of the Jubilee was, in fact, the solstice. Then why did not Sir Richmond postpone this solstice business of his until, let us say, today, Later this afternoon. One day later would not have mattered, or so I can presume such a postponement would make no difference. I cannot say with certainty, but it had always been my understanding that what the family did on the solstice, or, to be exact, what a male of the Carter line did on the solstice, had to be done exactly on the solstice, and that could not be amended. Holmes was silent for a moment. I looked at Dr. Mayton and was probably not hiding my curiosity over what he may have been touching upon. "I know you already answered this, Doctor, but was there any chance Sir Richmond was technically alive and dying when you arrived?" Holmes asked Mayton. "None whatsoever, Mr. Holmes," he replied, "unless Michaels is incompetent or was fooled by the precise timing between one moment when a man is alive and the other when he is dead. Sir Richmond's death occurred sometime between his unnoticed arrival at home and the servant's discovery of the body. Unless—" I looked at Dr. Mayton as he stared directly at Holmes. "Unless—" Holmes looked back into the eyes of the doctor. "His life ended at a location other than his bedchamber, and he was removed from there and brought here by another person, one concerned with his death." "Just so," said Mayton quietly. "That would open the matter to some other possibilities, Dr. Mayton, and to an aspect that would most probably not concern you. May I ask why you have called for me? I am honoured you have, so please accept the question in the spirit in which it has been asked. I admit to a great deal of curiosity the strange circumstance which your friend has been put to, especially as we will presume he did not ingest the toxin by his own volition. Naturally, I would hope that justice would be delivered to the man responsible for what became Sir Richmond Carter's fate, but the official inquiry would yield an investigation. I will answer you shortly on that point, Mr. Holmes, but could you not please use this time for you to examine the state of Sir Richmond before the police arrive? After you were dropped off at the front door, my carriage would have driven to the Metropolitan Constabulary, where my coach's footman will deliver to whomever would be in charge, at this hour, a short letter from me, urging the police come to the mansion at once. You have performed admirably, Doctor. You cannot be faulted for postponing the timing of their arrival by an extra hour or so, as you have done. And this would allow me to see for myself the state of the late gentleman in what time we have, before someone from the Met arrives." "Very good, sir," said Dr. Mayton. "So, to answer your question, I have called you in for your assistance in this matter, because it would give to me peace of mind were you accompany me to the yard, where I will have to appear and give my statement. This was on my mind when calling for you. Not only the fact that there will be shown foul play was at hand, but also— well, sir, I am the one to find him in the condition which he was found. There will be an inquiry where Michaels and I might feature, and I am worried about my late friend being placed in a negative light, either by the investigation or these scandal sheets, sir. Will you assist me in being present at whatever proceeding I may be required to attend?" In saying this, Dr. Mayton appeared to include both of us together in his plea. "Of course we will see you through this," Holmes answered for the both of us. I commented, "I will also visit Dr. Regatta, who I know from a previous meeting. Sir Richmond's post-mortem is in good and honest hands there. And since we have that out of the way, Dr. Mayton, if you are up to it, I would ask you to give me a few more facts that you would have to answer for at the police inquiry. This way, before it occurs, you and I will not have, at least between us, any surprises. This would only take a few more minutes." "Yes, Mr. Holmes." "So you arrived at the Carter estate?" Holmes prodded the man. "What was the order of the things that you did?" Dr. Mayton took another long sigh of breath. "Well, I arrived and took about 10 minutes to determine as best I could the full condition of Sir Richmond's body, and with the assistance of Michaels, I administered some emergency procedures one does in such a situation. though, as I mentioned, I knew these actions were futile. Still, one acts as one can in the correct administration of protocols. As he was face down, we turned him over, and I ensured the breathing passage was unblocked and pressed his stomach and lungs, but nothing showed any register. It was obvious he was lost, and I understood this, as did Michaels, who stood next to me staring down at his master in the deepest sorrow. "Dr. Mayton," I asked, "what was Sir Richmond's condition in relation to any notion that he made an attempt to remedy his harm or prolong his life?" "None, doctor. He was positioned in his bed as though he had crashed onto it. There was no sign he spent his time and energies attempting to help himself in any way before he got to his bedchamber." "So why the view of poison then? Why not merely a weak heart that gave way to arrest?" "Because, Mr. Holmes, his heart and constitution was strong. I had examined his heart only last month. I also put him through some stress testing. He was as durable as a peasant, a perfect specimen. I'm certain we will find, however, the poison did indeed work upon his heart." "Why do you believe he went upstairs instead of to his servant, or to another who could bring to him genuine help?" asked Holmes. "That is a mystery, is it not? Many poisons of this kind do not hide what is happening to one's body. A man under the grip of certain toxins acts. Where it is a poison that tells, it is the worst moment of one's life. Seeking medical attention or alerting someone becomes foremost in the mind of the victim. Yet Sir Richmond did, Lord knows what, in the time he had allocated him, and then accepted his fate. At least that becomes my guess, because as you say, Mr. Holmes, he did nothing to bring himself to benefit." "Then, doctor," interjected Holmes, "we may begin with the premise this was not, let us say, something similar to colchicum." "Agreed," said Mayton firmly. "Poisons of that kind do a number of horrible things to the body, cause excretions and expel the awful from inside one and, well, generally make a mess, to avoid having to put it in gross terms." "And the household staff during this time?" asked Holmes. "Michaels and Weller were awake, as you know. The cook, cook's assistant, maid and parlour-maid had gone to bed for the night. The 4 women in service are given leave to turn in earlier than the men, and I have noted Sir Richmond has encouraged them to do so, as a policy. The men, that is Weller and Michaels, who are the only men who live and work here in the home, stay up and wait upon their master's return. Weller need not do this, but I believe he views it as something of an honour to be omnipresent to the household until his master has made his way upstairs and has retired." "Dr. Mayton," said Holmes, "you do know a great deal of the household's organisation." "Yes, that is very so. I have been physician and friend to Sir Richmond all his life and to his father when he was alive. I have known the family now for over 60 years. You might say I grew up with Sir Richmond's father, the 5th Baron, Sir Walton Carter. Sir Walton also served in Scotland and was awarded Order of the Thistle. Sir Richmond did service in Scotland. All of the males did a full 6 years. There is a proud tradition there. This household does seem perfectly organised, and the matter of how Sir Richmond passed is exemplary of this. Based on what I have learned, we do have before us a rather complicated set of events which happened over the space of several hours. And these events all work to ultimately not make anyone aware of Sir Richmond's return. Therefore, no notice was made evident to his staff of his whereabouts. Very singular, would you not agree? Yes, Mr. Holmes, I see this. What you have stated is like that one book which becomes missing from the shelf, is then later replaced perfectly and without the movement of the other books on the shelf from either side. Holmes finished the man's comparison. And should any of the other books have been disturbed, the movement would register in some manner. Yes, Mr. Holmes. Then both Michaels and Weller were searching about when their master arrived, and because they were involved in their fruitless search, the two never noticed the return of their master. Or, in an alternate circumstance, they did not notice Sir Richmond's return by means of assistance from person or persons unknown. This is not my forte, Mr. Holmes, but yes, I believe you have it there, in what could only have been the two possibilities we would have to deal with, responded Dr. Mayton. What do you know of Sir Richmond's coachman? Is there a travelling footman who rides above with that man? Certainly his coachman, at the very least, would have assisted the stricken man after he alighted from the carriage upon arriving home. For the matter of that, wouldn't he have shown upon entering his coach before being driven home any indication of his infirmary? Would not the combined interest in the coachman and footman work to give Sir Richmond an advantage of, for example, being taken directly to your home, Dr. Mayton? The man appeared taken aback. Mr. Holmes, I never bothered to think of that. Michaels arrived at my home after running to it from here. It is less than 20 minutes by stroll. I dare say one can walk from any one place in Camberwell to another in under half an hour. Together we took my carriage back to the manor here. But I can say to you that neither coach nor groomsman live atop the carriage house as they had in Sir Vulton Carter's day. Sir Richmond uses them in precise ways, and they are given a schedule the day previous for the next day's work. So they arrive sometime before the schedule begins and prepare the coach as need be. There is in fact a boy, some waif rescued by Sir Richmond, who lives alone in the carriage house. He does bits of gardening, tends the horses, other odd jobs well are assigned to him. He would know of the coach's use should we ask him about it. Shall we awaken him? No, let us move upstairs. Time will soon run away from our ability to make at least a cursory inspection of where Sir Richmond lays. But sad to say, we learned nothing from our inspection of the remains of the late Carter Richmond. It was all as Dr. Mayton had said, though what was interesting was the clothing he had been dressed in. It was his formal black tie, only his collar had been disturbed. His hat lay on the floor. The man, Michaels, stood as we entered and gave to us the most chilling expression, a mixture of sorrow, pity, and horror. For in his brief conversation with Dr. Mayton, he knew his master had been killed. While suicide was a possibility, no one's thoughts had gone in that direction. There were simpler and more effective ways to kill oneself, and by methods that did not involve causing one misery in the final hour of one's life. I opened his collar, Mr. Holmes, said the doctor. So I gathered, Holmes replied. And you said you and Michaels turned him over? Yes. Holmes immediately lay flat on the floor and looked about to many places using his lens. Dr. Mayton, Michaels, if you would not mind showing to me the soles of your shoes, he said to them. They complied. The two of you moved about the wood surrounding the bedposts, and that was to be expected. But still I can state conclusively that there was no other person or persons who entered the bedchamber. I can make out clearly a line of walking by Sir Richmond to his bed when he fell onto it, still in his shoes as he is now. He did this alone. Should there have been a fourth or fifth person who had been in this room during the past several hours, the dust upon the surface of the floor would tell such was the case. Nor was it swept in any manner. We must then rely on the post-mortem, concluded Holmes. The only official police officer who arrived from the Met was a Sergeant Estabor in plain clothes, who stated men from the yard would arrive eventually, and that Dr. Mayton should make himself available to the yard sometime in the later morning. He explained to us that 2 constables would stand guard, one outside under the portico, and one before the door to the chamber. He then dismissed Dr. Mayton and said he would stay to question Weller and Michaels. He nearly sneered at our being called by Dr. Mayton and our taking it upon ourselves to, in his words, hang about. The 3 of us found our way to Dr. Mayton's carriage, and we were driven first to Baker Street and then to my home. The carriage would return to our homes sometime between 10 and past, and that together we would visit Scotland Yard. When I arrived home, my wife turned toward me from her position in our bed and asked where I had been. It was after 3 o'clock, and I simply told her something had come up, requiring me to see Holmes. She smiled as she returned to sleep and said to me or to the gods, "The game is afoot," as I recovered her with the top blanket. Some 7 hours later, after I managed a short sleep, Dr. Mayton's carriage arrived at our door. I had been to the new Scotland Yard twice this year, once during January, when the detectives were moving into their offices, and another time in March to have a brief conversation with Tobias Gregson. It appeared the staff had become comfortable in their new digs. Dr. Mayton was escorted to one of the interior offices of glass surround, and inside we could see as we approached a seated Stanley Hopkins. Standing by his side was a uniformed officer with 2 gold stripes on his sleeves. "Well, well, Mr. Holmes. Good morning to you. You and Dr. Watson are here with my witness, Dr. Mayton, I see. You're not going to let me have one homicide to myself, it would appear." Holmes smiled. "We are here to help, Dr. Mayton, during this time of crisis, not to interfere with your duties. I was hoping you would allow me to stay a while with you and Dr. Mayton while Watson visits with Dr. Regatta. Dr. Watson has some views on poisons, and perhaps the two may be of benefit to one another. We assured Dr. Mayton the Yard would do its best to be discreet in matters of the doctor's professional standing in the city, and that the officers would ensure privacy in the matter of investigating the death of Sir Richmond Carter. Well, naturally. And if any of my men even report of this meeting to the gossip sheets, they'll get what for," Hopkins said. He leaned back in his chair and looked at the ceiling for a moment before continuing. "You know, Mr. Holmes, what I never expected with our professional expansion of the Yard and the Met was this new breed of journalism that pretends it will be like Dr. Watson's writings in the magazines, but is not in any way. I'm talking instead of these others with banners reading true detective work, but featuring nothing more than sensationalism and pulp. These serial accounts of criminals are not new, but what is new is the pretended, supposed and so-called inside story. These nonsense articles include copy that reads, 'Inside the workings of Scotland Yard, our man reports,' etc., and on, featuring descriptions and details of cases that are only true half the time. And how can we deny something without opening ourselves up to confirming something else? But the good Dr. Mayton is assured we will treat him professionally, and any statements we make to the press would never include comments about witnesses or official statements made to us by anyone who is a professional, giving their views on a matter. His name would not ever come up. We give the press only accounts of what we do at the scene, or in the laboratory, or on the streets. That is protocol and sound police reporting." "Excellent, Hopkins. Good to see you have an official policy about it," said Holmes. Then to me, "Did you hear that, Watson? You are the respectable crime reporter and not a scandal sheet monger. My only interest, as well you know, is serving a readership with the more important and detailed of your adventures. From your point of view, I usually succeed in my choice of subject matter and fail at scientific method without human drama." I responded to Holmes's jibe with precision. "And," Hopkins said to me, "as I understand it, you wish to see Dr. Regatta about his post-mortem on the remains of Sir Richmond." "If that would be allowed," I answered. "Certainly. In my book, ex-army surgeons are always welcome around these precincts. And a second pair of eyes is on the plus side," Hopkins added. "Corporal, take Dr. Watson downstairs to the coroner." "Right away, sir." I knew the way but accepted the escort, and 5 months after our first meeting, I once again shook the hand of Dr. Regatta, who impressed me very much the first time we met. "So we have to see this poisoning and how it works on the body, yes?" he said to me, taking me by the arm and walking me to the central chamber of his work area, featuring 12 of the new kind of slab tables, which could be tilt-positioned. Near these were several side tables, holding various implements used for his craft, and along the walls many side cupboards and a good deal of shelving. There were 6 other examiners present, each working alone or as a pair, with the remains of other men and women. The case, that is, the body which are the remains of Sir Richmond Carter, showed classic symptoms of oleander poisoning, and, in my opinion, 2 different varieties were combined to kill the man. There was yellow oleander, also campanilla, bestial tree, or, to be technical, Thievetia peruviana. All parts can be fatally toxic, particularly the fruit. After ingestion and time, the pulse slows, and there is shock. But another of my experts here suggested we were dealing with something else, and since we have pumped Sir Richmond's stomach, it has just now been verified there was indeed a secondary poisoning mixed into the first. This is Pride of India, the Chinaberry tree, or the China tree that is Melia azadirach. Its fruit contains a toxic narcotic which attacks the entire central nervous system. Both of these plants can be gathered throughout Hawaii and Central and South America. We believe Sir Richmond had great pain, and at a precise moment, and he would have only felt it for a few seconds before its effects showed his situation to be dire. Then, should he have been prostrated, he would not have been able to move enough to alert someone for help. This shows a certain genius on the part of our poisoner, as the toxin was diluted before attacking the respiratory system. These poisons do not hide, and the gentleman's spleen and liver show instantly during our post-mortem, and we were able to determine what killed the man. That is, he went from seemingly healthy to becoming poisoned in perhaps one moment. It was easy to identify these oleander types, as their telltale signs give us a full understanding of their mischief straight away. Finally, though I do not wish to do Inspector Hopkins's job, no man would use these toxins as a means of suicide. The fact there were 2 poisons especially shows this to be the best argument for an intentional homicide. Your report justifies your office in every way, Dr. Regatta. Thank you, Doctor. And though the circumstances are tragic, I am glad to discuss professional matters with you once more. I am impressed at how quickly you came to your understanding of what poisons you were dealing with. We have been at work on the matter since 6 o'clock this morning, and we did have to abandon several guesses before we found ourselves on the right track, but our studies did move forward. It is the same way with Holmes and his work, as I have learned that for every moment where he is able to proclaim a breakthrough clue, which amazes the observer, there are several other smaller clues that allowed him to build on to get to that larger reveal. And, left out of my publications of his achievements, are the many false positives that have nothing to do with the issue in question, and Holmes must abandon each of them in turn as he hunts for specks of gold among the pyrites. Ah, and in this we have a common working, myself and Mr. Holmes. For little presents itself to us in our laboratory, Dr. Watson. Every discovery is paid for with many minutes of ideas that are eventually abandoned. But still these ideas must be tested. I have been following the work of Thomas Edison in America and his obsession with electric light. It is the same for him as it is for Holmes in his detective work, and we in pathology. 100 attempts until we arrive at what is for us, our version of his carbon filament with cotton linen. That was Edison's eventual conclusion, but just the same for us and Mr. Holmes, the things tried along the way to get there. That's the genuine story, is it not? The unseen attempts and reassessments I go through, as does Mr. Edison, as does Mr. Holmes. I smiled at the man. And now that you know what the poisons were, you can move the investigation forward for Inspector Hopkins. I am marvelled. Oh me, no, he exclaimed. I see you do not get there. You are not, I am sorry. You have not yet been to understand the unique experience of this gentleman, he said, pointing to the nearly covered body on the marble table, or the case, as he referred to the remains of Sir Richmond Carter. You are correct, Doctor. I know nothing of this circumstance, if there is a unique matter beyond his being poisoned. Ah, la 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 la. Yes, what I must share with you is something I know of only from Inspector Hopkins' discussions here in the post-mortem section. He was not prepared for the several reports which came to him just 1 hour ago, but as they did come in, he had a tantrum of excitement over each. If I had his job, I would too make similar exclamations and have similar fits. Sir Richmond had been observed over the past 24 hours in many circumstances, where he publicly imbibed many fluids of many kinds, and at settings which would astonish the most disinterested observer. There is a list of four instances where his drinking before others was made spectacle. Not only that, but it also appears there is a literal understanding, a catalogue as it were, of his whereabouts for all of yesterday, during which time he was seen at all moments by several witnesses, until he finally vanishes from the sights of the world for some time, and then dies. The good Inspector Hopkins has been informed by this office, that is by me, that unless he can do something to narrow down the time wherein Sir Richmond was given the poison, or took the poison, or was tricked into drinking the poison, positioning any one of the persons involved in the moment of drinking will be lost in the precision of the evidence, and, Dr. Watson, 4 possible suspects, or groups of suspects, who could have perpetrated such an act, means that in court, no specific person or conspiracy could be separated out from the various choices. Hearing this brought to me some of that amazement Dr. Regatta mentioned, and all I could say to him was, In court, each defendant would merely point to the other possible defendants who were not prosecuted and say it was him or they, and you would have hung jury after hung jury. Your phrasing the situation is by far better than the comments made by Inspector Hopkins. His language was so much more colourful that for 3 minutes he was an Italian more so than an Englishman. Many of my former patriots would have been proud of him for his use of various oaths. Together we made our way to the offices of Inspector Hopkins, and I believed Dr. Regatta joined me to take part in the discussion Hopkins would inevitably have with Holmes, and telling Holmes of the unique investigation in which he, Hopkins, would have to engage to determine the moment of drink where Sir Richmond took in the toxin. We arrived upstairs, and I once again found myself in the outer office of the Detective Bureau, and through the glass that surrounded each of the inner offices, I saw at least 2 other inspectors I knew. Lestrade was not in his office, but there was Tobias Gregson, who did not look at us, which Regatta thought strange. "You are with me," I said to Regatta. "Gregson is avoiding eye contact with us, meaning Holmes and I, because of recent events and a published report that he was worsted in a situation related to Baron Maupertuis. Of course, all of England has discussed the events surrounding this adventure of you and your friend. It was in the press for a whole month and only became less discussed as the Jubilee approached and stories of its preparations moved those of Holmes and the Baron off from the pages. I promised Holmes I would not publish the case while the Baron was still involved in his schemes," I said to Regatta. "Then I will respect that, Dr. Watson, and we will speak no more of it. But Inspector Gregson must stop kicking himself over it. It is past, and it all turned out well." "True, but no one likes poor notices in the papers," I commented. Stanley Hopkins flagged us with one of his hands, and we walked in to join him and his corporal, who had taken me downstairs. He was Assistant Inspector Kelly. Seated around the inspector's table were Holmes and Dr. Mayton. I sat down to join in the conclave. The depressed look on Hopkins' face carried in it what I had learned from Regatta moments ago. "Dr. Watson, somehow I think our friend here," he nodded to Regatta, "has placed you in the fullness of the picture in more ways than the identification of the poisons involved. I believe you have a chore before you, Inspector," I said to Hopkins. "So I have, and so our forces will have to deal with the matter step by step." It was then I saw the expressions of Hopkins and the Assistant Inspector, who were facing our direction, change. Holmes turned to the side, as did Dr. Mayton, and Regatta and I turned fully around from the position in my chair, determined to see what the others had fixed their view upon. It was an elegant woman who had walked into the outer area. Her presence in the dull offices was startling, and none of us could take our eyes from her. She was of cream skin and rosy cheeks, with lips that showed they had been painted a bold red. She had raven black hair that was unusually styled in light curls, which hung about her neck and shoulders and not done up, which was the current fashion. Her light blue silk dress, its double fold over at the top, and perfectly laid triple skirts, one over the other, with black cord and embroidery, combined a rich look with simplistic beauty. The effect of seeing her through the glass and standing in the centre of the outer office among the civil servant browns, tweeds and blue uniforms was, to say the least, quite noticeable. I had a moment to see how Holmes reacted to her, and he did not disappoint. His eyes fixed on her and every movement she made. Assistant Inspector Kelly walked around Hopkins's desk and out of the inner office until he was before her. He spoke with her for a moment before escorting her into the office. "This is Miss Genevieve de Lance of Camberwell, Portmandia Manor," said Kelly. "Which of you gentlemen is in charge of the investigation into the death of Sir Richmond Carter?" "I am, Miss de Lance," answered Hopkins. "Very well, then," she answered. "Are you responsible for sending to me this Assistant Inspector Bruce?" "I am. We are dealing with the death and probable murder of a man, and you are on our list as one of the last persons to have seen him alive. We are making appointments for all similarly situated witnesses to come to these offices and provide us with a statement. Are you here for that purpose?" "I am most certainly not here for that purpose, nor am I here to make a statement about the weather or about the traffic on Park Lane, or about the price of tea in Shanghai, I am here to express to you that we at Portmandia have never before been visited by the police for any purpose, let alone for making a statement, as you call it. Are you aware that along with this Bruce Inspector, there was a uniformed policeman on our property at the front door to our home? Well, yes, miss. Visiting you would require our officers have access to at the least your front door, Hopkins answered, attempting to be polite. Miss Delance took a breath. Has there been some change in how the police interact with the classes of importance, Inspector? Well, not from me especially. I have always treated people of various social strata in relative equality to one another, and that has not changed since I began my work in the Detective Bureau. But to let you know, there has in fact been a change in possibly the way police interact with families who have a peerage. The Statute Law Revision Act of this year, by Parliament, did remove some of the unnecessary technical matters related to our visiting your property, and any subsequent interaction between the police and those in your home. We ask statements from any who find themselves as witnesses where there is a crime, and most everyone understands this as an average formality. You wish an exception, Miss Delance, which should apply to our visiting Portmandia Manor? Most assuredly, sir, she responded. Please do not trouble us again. I cannot promise that. And Miss Delance. Hopkins sorted some papers on his desk before continuing. 3 people stated you were with Sir Richmond yesterday, and went away with him for approximately 4 hours, from late in the afternoon until dusk. What of this? Am I to be accused of bringing him to harm? We will need to establish what you were doing at the time, the 2 of you, and whether during that time Sir Richmond had anything to drink, Hopkins said to her. A strange expression came over her. It turned from a twisted look to one of sardonic humour. She laughed aloud. The laugh became louder and travelled over the tops of the glass walls of our inner office, filling the outer office. From the reactions of those in some of the other inner offices, the lady's voice had travelled down from the top of the room and into their enclosures. Did he have something to drink? Well, naturally. That was exactly the purpose of our meeting together. I poured him a drink, a very large drink. She laughed at us as though we were supposed to understand a joke she was making, though none of us could. She then saw our puzzled faces and she stopped her laughter and made an expression of her own, one that included a smirk, but that too faded and became a quizzical glance at us. He drank up the waters at Burnham Wood, where the Thames runs by Cliveden. He drank up the river there as he did every year at this time. This was given to us as though we should all understand what she was saying, though it may as well have been spoken by her in a foreign tongue. Holmes broke the silence. Miss Delance, I speak for all of us when I ask you to continue what you are discussing. We know nothing of why Sir Richmond should want to drink from waters near Burnham Wood, and do so every year. She took a moment. And who may you be? I am Sherlock Holmes. Oh, yes, I know about you. Miss Delance took a moment to regard my friend. She turned to Hopkins. Am I correct, Inspector, that you believe one of the causes for Sir Richmond's death may have been from his drinking water while he was with me? Certainly, questions of that kind would be part of our investigation. But to be fair, Miss Delance, anyone who shared drink with Sir Richmond would all have the same questions asked of them. And I have to tell you, this water business is the first I've heard of it. There are others who had drinks with Sir Richmond yesterday, and now, well, you are the 5th. Then, if another was more correctly assigned the blame for the poisoning of Sir Richmond, the others would be in a better circumstance. Naturally, Hopkins responded, surprised Miss Delance needed to be reassured of the obvious. Mr. Holmes, I will pay you 100 guineas to show I did not poison Sir Richmond Carter. There was a quiet, at which point my friend gave Miss Delance a half smile, before saying, I accept your commission, Miss Delance. Now, Inspector Hopkins, when Mr. Holmes is done proving my innocence, your office will have one less person to question. Mr. Holmes, please conclude this proof by tomorrow in the afternoon. To Inspector Hopkins, If Mr. Holmes fails to demonstrate my innocence, Inspector, I will make myself available for your inquiry tomorrow, following afternoon tea. Until then, please leave me and my home and my staff at Portmandia alone." "Mr. Lance," said Hopkins with an inflection of consternation, "I cannot promise any such thing. We have our investigation and our time schedule is designed by my office and not by your convenience. You have," she gave back to him, "made it quite clear already of how your plans are based, and without respect of those persons for whom you serve, and in the correct deference expected by myself and others in my position. Yes, there is no question about that. Your underlings demonstrated as such today at my home. You demonstrate it with every speech you make to me that these new codes of Parliament appear to operate in the most unkind manner toward those who have made this kingdom, and this city, and your office. But regardless of your needs, that is, the needs of this investigation of yours, it matters not to me how you draw up this plan of yours, as I do not intend to be available to you until tomorrow afternoon. So it holds no importance how you should view the matter until then, and by that time Mr. Sherlock Holmes will have demonstrated to you, and to any other interested persons, that I am innocent of any harm that was brought to Richmond." Hopkins made a brief show of reflecting upon the words of his guest. "And, Mr. Lance, should I postpone your interview with this office until the time you suggest, will you give to me an understanding why you went all the way to the woods outside of London to drink water? Because that was what Sir Richmond wanted to do. It was what he always does this time of year," she answered. "Well, always had done. So you poured a large drink of river water for him, and he drank it while he was out there?" Hopkins pressed. "You have it perfectly," she answered him. "I flew out to the water, stood in it, filled an urn, flew back, and poured it for him afterward." "You flew out to the water?" Hopkins was beside himself. "I just said as much." "How did you ever do that?" the frustrated police inspector asked of her. "Why, with wings, naturally." And with this final comment, she embraced us all with her eyes, moved and turned, and finally waited for Kelly to open the door for her as she departed, leaving us all agape, save for Holmes, who continued his thin smile. Part 2. Flight of Fancy. We left Stanley Hopkins to his many investigations and returned to Baker Street. Before arriving, Holmes had the driver of our hansom slow and take us around the block until he eventually found Tibber, a friend of Wiggins, and perhaps second in command, if there was such a position, of his Baker Street irregulars. Find Wiggins, or if he's not around, locate another, and the two of you report to me in an hour, but not until then. At my old lodgings, I sat and took in a welcomed pipe, while Holmes busied himself, preparing some messages, copying the first he had made repeatedly. It was a brief statement, and each took him only a few minutes to write out, and when he was done, there was a pile of them. He consulted his volume on the peers of England, finding a certain page and not leaving it for some time. I also saw him consult more than one of the more dusty tomes in his collection, which I knew to contain events and stories of heraldry. Soon Wiggins and Tibber came upstairs with Mrs. Hudson in tow, making a sour face as the two made their way inside Holmes's apartment. "These must all go out, and you will get some looks from the locals who inhabit the area surrounding the homes there, but persevere. Find the third footman or assistant servant of some lower importance, and give that person one of these. Make certain it is one of the more junior persons, as you should not expect the Lord's butler to give you access to the silver closet." They laughed. They took 24 or so messages from Holmes, along with £0.50 for each of them, and were off. "Some of these will fail to hit the mark, Watson. That is why there are so many of them. 3 or 4 good answers will do well for us, and I anticipate we should have some responses. We will spend a small amount of our clients' money, well, mine at this point, to get ourselves some answers." "And you are bribing these lower-level servants to do what exactly?" I must make the chain of a timeline for yesterday, and that will take the day and keep me here. I have no interest in playing the game without any data. I will have it, and then we will have the movements of Sir Richmond. Tomorrow is your foot day then. I cannot help you until after a late breakfast, which would bring me here at 11 o'clock. That would be very generous of you, Watson. I'll look forward to your coming round at that time. I rose to leave, yet at that moment Mrs. Hudson came into the room with her salver in hand, and from it Holmes picked up a card. "Mr. Lance," said he, "it would appear, Watson, that she wastes not a moment in conferring with us over the details of what was her time with our lamented baronet. Well, Holmes, remember she wishes you to stave off any interaction with the police, and there is a deadline before her." We turned to the door, and there was Mr. Lance at the threshold of the room, with Mrs. Hudson standing behind her. "Thank you, Mrs. Hudson," said Holmes. "The lady is expected, and is indeed most welcome." The housekeeper watched as Mr. Lance took some steps to enter the room, and after sweeping her eyes once more over our visitor, Holmes's faithful landlady turned slowly from the upper landing and left us. Holmes gestured to the larger double-seated chair, and she took a moment for her eyes to embrace the both of us before seating. "Your grandfather is mentioned in the College of Arms Book of Heraldry, Mr. Lance. I presume your father will be similarly noted in the next edition." "This is so, Mr. Holmes. My father is Chevis Esmond de Lance, 8th Baronet of Hailstone in the north. Our lands there are extensive, as the fee was granted in the time of Elizabeth, and was a gift from the royal forestland she inherited there from her father. There is a decidedly Spanish flavour to the stories involving your family at the time of the founding of the fee," Holmes said, himself taking the chair opposite. I placed myself apart from their immediate conversation. My ancestors had to make a choice, and the choice was English, and in fact the service performed for Her Majesty Elizabeth during the time of the naval campaign was of inestimable importance. The history books say that much. Mr. Lance allowed herself a cautious smile. They say more. Holmes looked at the lady with some respect. "Your forebears gave important accounts to the admirals of the Royal Navy, and this proved important, some say decisive, during more than one of some of the engagements involving certain identified ships on the open sea. That is a careful way of saying my family spied out the positions of various sections of the Spanish fleet, Mr. Holmes, but our family has never been embarrassed about what happened. The Spanish crown was warned by my father's forebears of many generations previous not to trust that our partial Spanish blood would be something it could count on as the Armada assembled. We were English for more than a century before the engagement, and did not hide this or equivocate when it came to where our loyalties lay. The Spanish crown was given express understanding of our patriotism when it came to our love of Britain. We remain equally proud of our British loyalty this day. It was over a year ago my father took over the title with great pride." I took a moment to appreciate our guest's general attitude when speaking of England. It was staunch, but also calm. Her command of herself under the circumstances of recently losing someone of importance to her, combined with the prospect of her being a suspect in his murder, made her bearing even more impressive. I was curious about the relationship she had shared with Sir Richmond, but at that moment Holmes spoke for us both. "Mr. Lance," said he, "I hope you will take a moment to answer a few questions that would help me aid in defending your innocence." "Naturally, Mr. Holmes. It is why I am here." "Very well. How would you describe your relationship with the late baronet?" "Our family has been close to that of the Carters for almost 2 centuries, Mr. Holmes. I was born into an appreciation between the de Lance family and the Carter family. But to be specific, my friendship with Sir Richmond was not only based on this history, but we were naturally friended toward one another from our childhood. We played together and spent time together, often doing those things 2 people would share only under the circumstances of their courting. From our parents' point of view, it was very—" She took a moment to search her mind for the proper term. "Unnatural," was what she finally settled upon. "If you don't mind my asking so, and I wonder, Mr. Lance, whether the official inquiry would touch upon this notion. That is, was there any thought between the two of you that such conduct may have interfered with any suitors who would have made their interest known to you? While some might find that impertinent, Mr. Holmes, we have— She paused. I have, she corrected herself, been living with that interpretation of my circumstance for some years now. In fact, my former relationship with Sir Richmond did not in any way deter gentlemen of distinction from approaching my father with interests of courtship and eventual matrimony. But, she relented some, it would be foolish of me not to accept that this relationship we shared meant that only the more, shall we say, progressive of such interested gentlemen would show me any of the typical forms of courtesy to an introduction that might lead to a courtship. So, Holmes summed up, it was a close friendship where gender played little part. This appeared to be more a statement than a question. I don't know about that, Mr. Holmes. By that I mean that I do not believe we were two androgynous beings who played together, disinterested in the sex of one another. The attraction Richmond had towards me was no doubt partially based on my having a woman's perspective on life, and from my point of view, I enjoyed his being a man and having the worldly position he had attained. I like men to be very masculine, and he was certainly that. No, Mr. Holmes, we were most definitely a man and a woman who were friends. In fact, as I alluded to you and your police friends earlier today, my involvement with Sir Richmond, relating to the event at the lake, was most assuredly due to my being a woman. She laughed in the breezy, ironic voice she had used earlier at the detective offices of Scotland Yard. So you stated, Miss Delancey, said Holmes. Please tell me about this event and your role in it. Every solstice Sir Richmond asked me to assist him with a brief ceremony related to the memory of his family's oath of fealty, and one which was not typical of the time of the foundation of the other many fiefs granted in the early 17th century. This appears to have been a private edition based upon the strange practices of the first baronet of the line, a man who celebrated what we might classify as a world view with an artistic flair. I do not know any other way to put it, but as Sir Richmond and I have discussed this at length for some years now, with my helping him in this manner, these are the words we have settled upon when discussing it among ourselves. Or, now that I must change my phrasing, those are the words we used. And in this ceremony, artistic and strange, you poured water from an urn, and Sir Richmond drank from the water's flowing cascade. Yes. And it is done on the solstice. Yes. I recall, Miss Delancey, that you stated you typically, in this ceremony, fly out to the water. Why do you state it so? Yes, Mr. Holmes. I suppose I was injecting some amount of dramatic levity into what should have been a moment of greater solemnity at the Metropolitan's offices. But I was not in the best mood. Sir Richmond had died, and my home had been invaded by these lower officials. So, to answer you, for the ceremony, each year I wear a special costume that is in fact only a shift, and another apparatus that are wings. Amazement does not come often nor easily to my friend, but here his expression at this moment showed just that. Wings, he stated back to our visitor. Yes, and beautiful feathery ones at that. She nearly giggled under her breath. I do look beautiful in them, if I would be allowed to pay myself a compliment. And of course Richmond believed I did, or he would have probably sought another to do this for him over these past solstices. And what else do you wear? I found myself interjecting a contribution into the discussion. Well, as I mentioned, there is a shift, and it is one of deep blue. It can at moments match the water. I wonder whether that was how the colour came about. I suppose it's an indigo in pigment. It's very old. It hugs me at the hips. At my hips there is a belt of jewels, worn at the top of the skirt. There is a necklace to match, also of jewels. They are a matching set and appear to be of some opulence, and I have always presumed them to be quite valuable. Do you know the details of these jewels? Holmes asked. They are precious gemstones, and of a wonderful variety. I wondered whether the necklace and belt made up of them stretched back to the founding of the fief and title. But most definitely these jewels are as important to the costume as are the wings. And your blouse, or your tunic, how else is the costume presented? I asked this for the both of us. Immediately upon making this question, first our guest smiled with a blush, and this was followed by Holmes's placing his gaze at the rug beneath his feet. Watson, Mr. Lance is going to inform us that there are no other parts to this costume. The room held a silence. Mr. Lance did not look at either of us, but she nearly smiled to herself. Finally she said, "Gentlemen, I have been performing this act for the benefit of Sir Richmond for several years now. He would have asked someone else had I objected, but from the start I was very comfortable with the act, and I have no idea whether it had to be performed in exactly those pieces of clothing and nothing more. I do not know how he would have reacted had I requested he add something to what I was given to wear, but it didn't matter. I was happy to do this for him. It was a beautiful act, and one of ancient love and fidelity. Whatever lay behind the motives of the Carter forebear who dreamed it up, from my position, making this possible for Richmond and his appreciation of my performing the act was all that mattered." After another moment, Holmes appeared to move on. "And the ewer, was this equally important and ancient? Now that I did wonder about, it was... it is powerful in its own way. Holding it has always given me a shiver to my spine, if you must know. That is ironic, I suppose. I'm not the least about being a goose where it comes to my not having anything on above my waist, but holding that picture has always given me a strange sensation. So you would, on the day of the solstice, travel with Sir Richmond to this lake, change into your costume by the water's edge, walk into the water with your skirt and wings, fill this ewer with water, walk back to where Sir Richmond stayed at the lake's edge, and pour water from the ewer into his open mouth. The way you describe it shows you fail to appreciate its solemnity, Mr. Holmes. There was ceremony and a quiet drama in my movements." But a moment later, Mr. Lance burst out with a bray of positive laughter. "Mr. Holmes, this is the first time I ever discussed it with anyone, though truth be told, I had presumed from the start others knew about it. All his men friends knew about it. Because of our relationship of all our lives, most would have surmised the ceremony featured me in the part of the angel, if that was what the wings were meant to signify. Are you guessing at the knowledge others would have had of your participation in the ceremony, or was it expressly stated to you by Sir Richmond that others knew of your role as his angel?" Holmes was matter-of-fact about his inquiry, and appeared to have no longer any interest in the strangely immodest aspect that was a part of the event. Sir Richmond did tell some of his intimates about the ceremony, and from their point of view, who else would he turn to for such a service? "Let us move then to the specific," said Holmes. "This picture that you used for each of the solstice events, to your knowledge, was it the same one that has been used from time immemorial, like the shift and jewels?" "To my knowledge, that would be so." "And can it be got at?" "That is to say, when it was not in use during the other 364 days of the year, was it where another person could find it and tamper with it?" "That is a question," Mr. Lance responded. "I do not know the details of who would be allowed access to it. I do not know whether another person would have been able to get at it, as you put it, to touch these things or hold them. I know are kept together in these two cases, and that they were kept locked up, and that only family members would know of their specific location. You are wondering whether there may have been ample time for anyone who had access to his residence to be able to obtain the picture and tamper with it. That is what you are getting at, is it not, Mr. Holmes?" "Yes, Mr. Lance. Naturally, I wish to follow up on any possible aspect to those moments during the time window. It can be shown Sir Richmond may have been poisoned, and account for each circumstance where he imbibed any drink of any kind. The ewer used in this ceremony of which you took part is but one such artifact involved in his drinking during that period, and we must account for every moment of placing its location. As he did so for the previous years, this summer's event was of no difference," answered Mr. Lance. She went on. "We met at the train station, where he had arrived with 2 cases wherein he kept the things used for the ceremony. Strangely, he never used his own coach to go to the station or pick him up afterward. He would hire one from the park behind his estate, which is currently under expansion. Despite the alteration of the land there, which has made the park a less attractive place to walk about, there is still there a line of carriages for hire. He would enter one and be driven to the station. After the event, he would hire a cab back to a location near to his home and perhaps walk a block or two to his front door. He never included his own coach or his own men for this. Each time we met at the station, he made the same reference to the jewels by a comment that seemed odd. That was, he would say to me that he had brought the jewels, taking them from where they had been caged. The jewels were caged, he would say. Making that statement had always been some kind of private joke, almost for himself. A strange sentence, I observed. Miss DeLance smiled at me, then continued with her narrative. He would set the items out and would then give me a moment's privacy, while I changed into my costume. He himself had always worn formal attire. He had to help me to fasten the wings to my body. That is, its harness is fastened from behind. And these containers are what exactly? Asked Holmes. One being a large chest with a handle on either side. I dare say the only substantially heavy item within it was the ewer. The skirt weighed nothing, and the jewels were in a small box wrapped up within the skirt. Richmond carried this one, as he always had. Then there was a large, hard container with one hanging handle for the wings apparatus. I had always carried this one down from the small platform where the train had stopped. I had done so on previous years, for though the container is cumbersome, it is not heavy. It would remind you more of a travelling case for a violoncello, Mr. Holmes, though in fact it is narrow and light, as the wings contained inside are not heavy, not in any real sense. Otherwise I could not wear them and enjoy the freedom of mobility I have when wearing them. They did not interfere with your movements, I asked. No, Dr. Watson. In fact, after the harness is on me, the wings become deployed in a permanent, open fashion. That is, they do not, and are incapable of, flapping, and are only in a folded position for storage when not worn. This folded fashion is how they are when they are off my body, or stored in their case. Once attached, they are designed to separate in an open fashion, and this does not change during the time when I wear them. This open fashion allows for the movement of my arms in every way beneath the wings. Yesterday, just as in past years, their generally light weight allowed me to walk from the edge of the lake, wade into it, bend down and collect water in the ewer, and walk back to where Sir Richmond was waiting for me. Meaning, Holmes stated, you merely bent down, filled the pitcher once, and stood to walk to where your friend waited. Not exactly as you describe it, Mr. Holmes. I did in fact rinse the ewer in the water below me once. I would do this by filling it as much as I could, and immediately empty that water into the river. Afterward, I would fill it about halfway, and then use that water for the ceremony. So he drank while on land? Asked Holmes. Yes. It is a curious annual event, though perhaps there are stranger rituals which occur throughout the world, said Holmes. I also wondered at this as the lady gave her singular narrative. England certainly had in its history a collection of weird and even bizarre and grotesque rituals. But to build an annual event around such a setting and activity, especially continued into the end of our century, did seem out of place. Yet there it was before us. I wondered at the original motive for why the wings had come to be included in the act, and what they may have represented during the time of their first use. Each element that was part of an act of fealty did have its purpose, and from someone's point of view, long ago, the wings must have meant something to this solstice water ritual. Holmes rose and our guest followed. I will do my best to get at this ewer before the official detective force does so. I expect to have some meetings today and tomorrow with those who have knowledge of the baronet's activities yesterday, and these conversations may shed some light upon the overall day that climaxed with your ceremony. I will expect to hear from you tomorrow then, Mr. Holmes, even if only to tell me that you could not procure my innocence through learning some fresh facts about the matter, based upon your investigations. I joined Holmes in wishing the lady safe travels, and Mrs. Hudson saw her down to the front entry. I took a brisk walk to the underground, and a longer one from the station to my home. The following morning, I broke fast with my wife before returning to Baker Street as arranged. After Holmes offered me my usual chair, he told me of the meetings he had throughout the day and into the evening, when some of these people in service had their freedom to slip away to meet with him. At this point, the real detective work has been in an examination of Sir Richmond's last moments of life and recreating it on this board as best we can. Holmes had set up his occasionally used slate board with a good deal of a time schedule made of chalk writing. The table had on it 5 instances of events where Sir Richmond drank large quantities of something, and surrounding these were time identifications, hours and minutes spent, principal and collateral witnesses identified, locations and drinks consumed. It is interesting to note how much of the events themselves surrounded and were in support of the second day of the Jubilee when Sir Richmond died at more or less the end of it all. And Miss Delance went where, after they returned from their travels? Well, Watson, we only have her word that the evening ended with their parting. Are you asking whether there was more to their event? Perhaps an assignation somewhere at his mansion, or at hers, or at some other place? I cannot guess how that would matter unless it would involve, let us say, a surprise bottle of claret, and the poison was given by her not as part of the ceremony, but in a more intimate circumstance. For you will see by this diagram that Sir Richmond was, in fact, never out of the sight of any group of people, 3 or more during his activities. You have, I can see, been busy. You have verified actions of people who were near him hour after hour, for presumably all of Tuesday. Just as you see before you on the slate. Holmes directed my attention to the board. In all cases, these moments of drink did involve several friends, family members, or acquaintances of Sir Richmond. But owing to the nature of the moment, there were at least 2 servants who were also present at the time, and the person who spoke with me gave to me the names of others who would be able to corroborate what they had seen. The blackboard had groups of various time sequences and events and names associated with these, with lines and arrows and marginal notations. For purposes of this narrative, I need not place down everything that was placed on the board by Holmes. Sufficient I show the following: 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. In attendance with company, watched Her Majesty pass by an open landau, attended church ceremony, participated in banquet, mixed drink, principally of juice with some champagne, 11:30 a.m. to 1 p.m. Prior to Her Majesty's diplomatic reception, attended a private gathering of those to be honoured, toasted with others those Her Majesty would honour. Wines were served to all who toasted the honorees, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. A gathering at his club in between events, along with others, tasted a new cask of sherry, donated by the Rothschilds from their vineyards. Sherry in poured glasses. 2 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. stops at an outdoor cafe, has a bottle of soda water made by J.J. Schweppe. This appears to have been impromptu for refreshment. Schweppe's Company Soda Water, Geneva, 1 bottle, approximately 5 p.m. to an imprecise end of day. In attendance with Miss Delance, rides to Burnham, ceremony for solstice, water poured from ceremonial ewer. I see many names written besides the entries. Who are they? In exchange for what I have learned, Stanley Hopkins has shared with me the fruits of the labours of his assistant inspectors. The names are of the various persons who are able to verify each of the events where drink was present. They are servants who were questioned by one of Hopkins's assistant inspectors, who gave their account of who was present when drink was poured. On the left are the names of the men and an occasional woman who were with Sir Richmond when he was included in the drinking, and on the right are the names of the servants who observed this. In this way, I have a doubling of my information, not only from my own conversations with those in service who were able to observe Sir Richmond during these moments, but I also have the same reports taken down by the officials. And as I mentioned, they have mine. These have all been cross-referenced, at least to the degree that an interview by me has been verified by an assistant inspector. Holmes finished. What of this bottled water just before he met with Miss Delance? Ah, that is coincidentally at the Italian cafe you and I have frequented now and again, when you wish to enjoy your linguine frutti di mare while watching the world go by. I was so excited by this impromptu act on the part of Sir Richmond that I sent a message asking the supplier of this beverage to come by this morning. He told me an interesting background to his product, that the grandfather of the explorer Darwin of whom I am unfamiliar, but who he told me has published theories on the origins of life on Earth that have just recently become accepted among anthropological scientists, encouraged England to support Schwepper's enterprise. England did not do so, so after his investment here in London failed 100 years ago, Schwepper went to Germany where it became a success, and in hindsight, we wish we had such a business here at home. The little tidbits one picks up while working a case. But as for the bottle, it was served him at random, and for intentional poisoning, the means to combine into it a lethal additive is not practical. Holmes, what if a conspiracy is involved? What if your names on the left in one of these groupings were part of the poisoning at a particular event? If you have 4 people who have created a conspiracy in this manner, you would truly have something new in the annals of crime. There would be no need for poison by conspiracy. Merely throw your man over a cliff during a hunt and have all claim they saw him stumble. No, Watson. Poisoning is unique in that it is nearly always the hallmark of one individual, or, in some cases, a couple of people, who as a couple would almost always be a married couple, or be similarly situated. It is the very nature of its use. It is private and discreet. It is in its delivery, surreptitious. And in this case, like so many others, there has been an attempt to cover up the moment of ingestion, and in doing so provide the poisoner with a valid alibi during a time sequence where the killer can blend into a greater event and be surrounded by the innocent. Then where will you begin? If all of these are events where a group of several were also present, and all could see him drink, and then presumably all could see whether the poison was induced to the medium of drink, and only Sir Richmond received the poison, how will you use your information you've acquired? What you ask must take second place to our immediate errand, beating Inspector Hopkins to the Carter estate. We must get to the ewer before he makes it there, or Assistants Kelly or Bruce, should they be acting in his stead. This matter has given Hopkins an army of subordinates at his disposal. One may beat us to our goal. The pitcher's capture is vital. I wish to know of its residue before our good friend Regatta has attempted similar study. Holmes, Dr. Regatta is not only very competent, but he would most certainly not hold back from you his findings, unless he were to be expressly ordered so by Hopkins. He trusts you will bring justice to any given matter. We shall agree upon that. Still, I wish to examine it first-hand for another reason. I wish to see how it will be produced, who will produce it, and how immediately. A hansom took us to Camberwell district in good fashion, and I observed the many London cafes we passed on our ride showed a packing up and setting aside of the extra outdoor furnishings associated with the Jubilee. It would be sad to see them all put away and the city return to its average dressing. Here was again the Carter estate, but now in the beautiful morning of the new summer's sun. Beyond its black gates was a horseshoe-shaped drive, surrounding a small flower garden, and springing from this a flagpole of a metal painted white, and the colours presented some 25 feet above. It all combined to give to the centuries-old community an exemplary statement of staunch values in a setting of beauty. As we walked to the portico, I saw above it a circular window of stained glass. To the left and right of this were 4 more windows, 2 on either side, and below, matching ones to the left and right of the portico itself. Weller opened the door of solid oak, surrounded by the most attractive courses of red brick, set into flawlessly edged mortar of cream colour with nearly a crack showing. Ancient as the house was, it presented itself as if it were in its infancy of history, fresh and appealing. Sirs. The butler used the plural, but was addressing Holmes, who had stood in front of me on purpose. "Good morning, Mr. Weller," Holmes said to the servant who was standing before us in immaculate black, with a mourning sash about his arm. "May I be of service? We are sorry to trespass on the home at this time, but we are here on professional obligation to the service of the late baronet's family's friend, Miss Genevieve de Lance. Also, we are here to act before the official investigation is at your doorstep. May I take the moment to ask who speaks for the Carters now that Sir Richmond has passed? I understood the estate only had Sir Richmond in residence." "Glendon Carter, Esquire, would be the family's new lord, sir. And are you expected, sir?" "Not at all," Holmes answered the man. "But it is important we speak with the new Carter lord. There is some urgency in the matter." There was a thought for a brief moment, followed by a courtesy. "Of course, sir, please enter." Weller opened the door fully. We entered, and our feet stood on large black and white tiles of marble. Around us were columns, and between these two massive paintings. One was the scene of an open field, where a knight's tournament was in commencement. Several stood in armour by their horses in position of greeting and chivalrous courtesy. The other was a scene of a royal person being hailed by knights in similar look as in the other painting. These were oils on canvas and had brought my thoughts to the Middle Centuries, though they appeared to be in the style popular from just over 100 years ago, from during, I presumed, the mid-18th century. "Please follow me," the butler said, his eyes sweeping to take in the both of us. We were taken to the room we had shared with Dr. Mayton, though now it was not the dark and dreary place it had been in the middle of the night. "The house is in mourning, sir, yet I believe it would be appropriate to ask you for your card." From a small side table, the butler picked up a tray very similar to, though more ornate than, Mrs. Hudson's salver. Holmes handed his card to the man, who placed it on the centre of this without any regard for what it may have read out. He bowed, turned, and left the room. Some time passed. I said to Holmes that I thought Weller might not be as front with us as he had demonstrated. He replied that there was at the manor a new master, and we were, in some sense, supplicants. The door opened by the hand of Weller, and into the room walked a young man somewhere in his late 30s or early 40s. He was of medium height and build, and generally pale. He was in strict mourning clothes of black and grey, with a sash of black satin showing. His black tie was dated by some years. His light brown hair was poorly combed, and his dark brown eyes darted to each of us, one after the other, as though he could not, or chose not to, hold either one of our gazes for more than a few seconds. "Mr. Sherlock Holmes." He looked to one of us, then the other. "I am Sherlock Holmes. This is Dr. John Watson, my colleague. May I have the honour of addressing the baronet of the Carter family?" "I would be he, Mr. Holmes. I am at your service. How may I help you? We are naturally in a state of bereavement, and are less than at our best for receiving company. But I will do what I can. Were you and the doctor close in acquaintance of my late nephew? I do know all he spoke of intimates and passing friendships, and those he favoured in company at his club. Your name was not among any he had ever mentioned, and I did not meet you during the past few days of our celebrations for the honour of Her Majesty. Is it possible I am in error on my not being aware of the friendship you may have held with Richmond?" The man began to walk toward the room's centre, where Holmes and I were standing between the pair of sofas. "We are not acquainted with the Carter family. I am here on errand to benefit Miss Delance, who asked me to look into a matter for her where a police investigation may ensue, should I not succeed in staving it off by later today. Please," he said to us, "pray rest yourselves." Glendon Carter raised an open palm to one of the sofas as he sat in the one opposite. Weller, the new baronet presumptive, spoke out at the opened door of the study. The butler appeared. "Let us have some refreshment." Then to Holmes and myself. "Something a bit more besides, gentlemen. A pour of the single malt from the glen outside our properties in the Highlands. It has been in barrels for some 18 years. Some good honey and almond notes may be enjoyed in its appreciation." "Thank you, no," Holmes answered, making it understood he was speaking for the both of us. "We do not wish to make ourselves a hindrance in the way of your mourning. I would trust my work to assist Miss Delance would be something your family would support." "Naturally, Mr. Holmes, all our family knows the Delance family. We are very close to their people, and have been for perhaps 4 or 5 generations. My late nephew's friendship with Miss Genevieve had been especially noted by one and all." The man turned to the butler, standing nearby. "Weller, tea only. And see whether Colleen has any of her cake available yet. I know it's early, but she often is spot on in this regard." "Indeed, sir," the man answered his new master. "I am aware of 2 cakes that are ready as of now, and her tea should also be on the fire and to hand." The man bowed and left the room. So you mentioned Miss Jenny, Mr. Holmes. You are on an errand to protect our family, though you are serving her. Do I understand that is so? Yes, just so. I hope you will find it in the interest of the Carter name to work with me before dealing with the official. Do not misunderstand me. I do not attempt to suggest you avoid the investigation already underway by the representatives of law enforcement. But I do act to be first in time before they arrive under formal inquiry, to locate and take from your home certain accoutrements related to your late nephew's solstice ceremony, namely a ewer made of ceramic. I wish to examine this before they come calling. Glendon Carter became serious and looked at us one after the other twice within a few seconds. Well then, we shall act immediately. But one question, if you don't mind. Miss Ginny did stop by to see me yesterday, if only to give to me her view of how the police investigation caused her some consternation at her own home where she lives with her parents and other de Lance family members. Apparently, there were inspectors there and without an appointment who expected swift responses to questions. This was surprising. I was chagrined for her and understood her reaction to this impertinence at her Manor's front door. Again, I note these inspectors from the Met came upon her and her family without an appointment. But that was not the point I was raising. It is this. How would someone from the official police know of the ceremony's use of the ewer? It would not have been advertised. Poor choice of words, you will forgive me. Miss Ginny would not have discussed with anyone the use of the pitcher, of her participation, or any of the style of how she assisted my nephew in performance of its enactment. Holmes responded, I would take the same viewpoint when considering how Miss de Lance would act in the matter. Most certainly she would not say a word about the use of the ewer until expressly asked of it. She did mention it at the headquarters of the Scotland Yard investigators, but in such a way that one might not take her too seriously. But to be frank, I believe the forces of the official investigation are never as far behind as many may believe they are. These are quite capable professionals. They will have questioned many, and it is my understanding the ceremony's details have been discussed with enough people that parts of its moving tableau may be received as verbal answers to one question after the other. This would lead to other more specific questions, and the answers to these would lead to the investigator being told of the ceramic pitcher and its use. Give the investigators time and they will get there. It is a mistake to believe they would not, and they move faster than one may imagine. The lead man of these is Inspector Hopkins, and he will not rest until he has a picture filled in when it comes to each moment of your unfortunate nephew's final day. Hopkins may not get it right the first or second time, but that will not prevent him from learning of the ewer's purpose, and from there his question of where it is kept once the ritual is concluded. Sir Glendon turned to Weller. Find Michaels and have him join us. Very good, sir. Weller left the room. A moment later, a maid entered the room with whom I presumed to be the cook's assistant. Tea and cucumber sandwiches and other small fare was presented. We thanked him and accepted something of what was placed upon the table before us. The ladies removed themselves from the room. Together the three of us took some minutes with tea, and Holmes took the time to ask some questions to Sir Glendon. We learned Glendon Carter was the youngest brother of Valton Richmond, and his mother was their father's second wife, her only son. Indeed, he mentioned he was very much the junior brother of the generation, with 20 years between himself and his late brother Valton. He was then Sir Richmond's uncle, unmarried. He was next in line to the baronetcy, and as he had no children, the next in line after him being a young cousin. Nearly all of the Carters resided in Camberwell, and they had made this district their home for generations. Weller returned to say that Michaels was outside the room, and Sir Glendon acknowledged this. I know this is an awkward time to ask Sir Glendon, but may we discuss how the late baronet spent his days? Certainly, and let us not have any embarrassment over your curiosity, Mr. Holmes. While you have made it clear you are providing your services in aid of Miss de Lance, we can all agree that you are indirectly providing to place the Carter family in the best possible light. Is that not so? I promise you the most discreet of inquiries. Anything I learn here today, and subsequently, would only be of record to the official agents of the law if certain matters uncovered by me were of the kind where I would be compelled to do so. For now, we will operate that my service is directly for Miss de Lance and collaterally in benefit to your family. Understood. Then about my nephew, and how he spent his days, as you have put it. He was something of an authority of the pianoforte, and while this did seem a bit queer to most, he took pride in tuning and restoring those that go back for over 100 years or so, that is, since the time of Mozart. There was a joke about his being a baronet in shirt sleeves, and he was not in the least embarrassed by this. He laughed along with the expression, and on occasion used it in describing himself. Many in Camberwell would turn to him with a piano problem. The man laughed lightly as he spoke these words. Instead of a lower middle-class professional along these lines, he could take apart and rebuild any piano. He was amazing to watch. It was generally how he spent his time, though he also helped Dr. Mayton in raising donations for London's poor and administering medical services for them. He grew up in a world of music and was born only a couple of decades after this household held many famous musical recitals and galas. That was back when Dr. Mayton and my brother Valton were children themselves, inseparable as children as they were until my brother died a few years ago. In their childhood, they, that is, Dr. Mayton and Sir Valton, got to be around when our conservatory was the most famous of its kind, not only in Camberwell, but in all of London. Sir Valton's father then hosted in the 30s and 40s many recitals of both the small gathering kind and the large event kind. Sir Valton's father had a close friendship, through other connections, with Felix Mendelssohn, who loved especially our pianoforte, more so than he did that instrument of his in-laws. The Jean Renaud family lives very close by and has for a long time. Felix and, let's see, Cécile Charlotte, that was his wife, visited London and stayed in Camberwell countless times, not only for performances and to see her parents who also lived in this district, but to come here, where Mendelssohn found our piano and the conservatory a refuge. I believe he especially enjoyed the birdcage. This received from Holmes and myself a reaction. I am not making a joke with you, gentlemen. Our conservatory has living songbirds, caged in a corner to the side of where the pianoforte stands, an invention of one of the line dating back to the late 18th century. Mendelssohn would perform in competition with the birds, and there was a lot of joy and good humour at this effect. Also, as an aside, the Carter family history includes the legend or true event, take your choice, that many of Mendelssohn's songs without words were sketched out by the composer on the piano in the conservatory. Dr. Mayton would have been present during some of those events if such was the actual case, though he would have only been 6 years or thereabouts. And as another aside, Sir Valton was a friend of William Bartholomew. He died just 20 years back. I know of the gentleman, Sir Glendon, said Holmes. He was a chemist. His death, when it was announced, included more than merely an obituary, as the Times ran some parts of his career. It was reading about him that drew me into studying chemistry. Well, yes, he was a chemist, Mr. Holmes, but his contribution to music involved translating the songs of Felix Mendelssohn from the original German into English. But this is all to let you know of the Holmes' importance in the Camberwell history. The works of Chopin and Schumann were also heard regularly at the chamber parties given in the conservatory. The guests enjoying their surroundings of music and flowers, under the glass ceiling and the glass doors, opening to the backyard's formal gardens below, and, naturally, the birds in their cage, contributing to the sounds. Were these the gardens Weller and Michaels walked last night in searching for their master? I asked. 3 gardens, in fact. We should give you a tour. You can stand upon the upstairs balcony and watch as the city is moving the earth about behind us to create a large public space in that field where Joseph Myatt grew his strawberries. It's quite an undertaking. We're going to have to place some hedges strategically along the borders of what will be a common walk. The city is not using its power to take any of our land, but by opening the area they have chosen to make available to the public, they are bringing the rear view of our estate into the eyes of a candid London, and that is our collective woe. Our family is not in the least impressed by this recent project that has the support of the Crown. Sir Glendon's spoken words trailed off, and then decidedly stopped. This, naturally, was not the time nor place for such commentary, and he checked his speech. I am sorry to have taken us off track, Mr. Holmes. Though the estate is small, we enclose as a residence about 8,500 square feet. Our private property not under roof is nearly 5 times that area space. The glass conservatory is a noted landmark, and our recent history related to the entertainment of music throughout this century, from the classical as it moved into the romantic, is well understood by all in the district. Before this, the estate was noted for the crossbreeding and cultivation of many of the rose flowers, common to the Crown Gardens throughout all of London. The roses made our name during the 18th century. Yes, Dr. Watson, these gardens would have been included in last night's search for my nephew. Dr. Mayton came by at 9 this morning and discussed with me the poisoning of my nephew, and I did not connect the water ceremony with his demise. That would have implicated Miss Ginny, and that makes no sense. She and Richmond were in love. Perhaps not in the accepted understanding of courtship, but in love they were. There could be no connection between the pitcher and the poison. None whatsoever. I'd stake my life on the pitcher not having any tell of anything more than water. And there would be no residual water, would there be? Does water act that way? Does it not dissipate, and that is that? Would you or the inspectors be hunting for droplets left within its bowl, or its stem, or whatever one calls the upper area of a pitcher? It is a spout, and sometimes artisans refer to it as a flaring spout, Holmes answered our host. The use of terms may be more correct one way and less correct another when it comes to a vase versus a pitcher versus a ewer versus a jug. But we will not split hairs over the matter. The interior of the piece of ceramic must be wiped, and as the police will no doubt intend to do this, so shall I. Well then, I shall take you to it presently. I am now the only member of the family who knows of the location of the key to where it is stored, and I will soon have to share this with young Jason, as he is in line after myself. Weller, bring in Michaels, said Sir Glendon. Michaels, Weller, said Sir Glendon. This gentleman has some questions for the both of you. Indeed I do, said Holmes. But first, whom among you has access to the closet, or wherever it is wherein are the 2 travelling containers that are used, I beg your pardon, that were used each year by Sir Richmond for his annual solstice celebration? Do either of you know of its general location? There was a pause, and Michaels looked briefly at Sir Glendon, who nodded back to the valet in curt fashion. That would be me, sir, said Michaels. These are kept in a special locked standing piece of furniture that would resemble a cabinet. Everyone probably knew of its location, because it is in the room where many other pieces of the household's furnishings are kept. I would like to see this room and cabinet, Holmes said to the man. Yes, said Michaels. We stood, and together we followed Michaels out of the study to the central staircase at the end of the foyer opposite to the entrance. After taking the main stairs, we followed Michaels as we passed the main gallery, with its handsome resets, where oak doors presumably lead to the private suites of rooms and perhaps 1 or 2 washrooms. Another short hallway took us to the second staircase, the one for the household staff, at the centre of the gallery, and unlike the formal stairs we had taken to come up to the gallery, curved round and elegant, here was the traditional double set of 2 equal and straight series of steps. In a moment we were on the second floor, where there was far less interior space and little detail to furnishing. No art hung on these walls, but instead austere photographs of farms and churches and mountains. The wood was bare in many areas of the walkways, which were, compared to the gallery below, generally narrow and not vaulted. This is the service floor, Mr. Holmes, said Sir Glendon. As you know, my uncle employed a light staff, so some of these rooms are empty. This is where Weller and Michaels live, and on the other side where the ladies reside. And here before this door is where I found the 2 cases this morning, when I arrived upon the note from Dr. Mayton. When I finally came upstairs to this level, I saw the cases in the hallway and placed them into the cabinet we are about to show to you. I have already determined, Sir Glendon, your uncle arrived alone after his ceremony. You have helped me to solve a minor mystery with this new information. I am attempting to establish his movements from the time of his return to the estate, and this is one of the puzzle pieces which, until now, had been missing. By that I mean where the cases might have got to after his return. and why they were not replaced into this cabinet piece you are about to show us. This supports the view that it was at the literal moment of his finding his way to this level of the home that he would have felt the effect of the poison, and then would have released the cases from his hands and gone to his bedchamber, wherein afterward he did expire. I see, Mr. Holmes, what a unique series of movements within a time period. And about the two cases, I have been to the estate more times than I can tell you. I have my own key to the cabinet, which I have always had as next in line, and now I suppose the other shall go to my cousin Jason. Here we are, gentlemen, said Michaels. Before him stood a door that matched the others, and was only different due to its being wider than the doors to the bedrooms. Please lead us into the room, Sir Glendon said to the man who had been his nephew's personal servant. Michaels opened the unlocked door, and we entered a sparsely furnished room. There was one window looking out to the property's side yard. There were 4 chairs which did not match, 2 large tables and 2 smaller ones. There were some lamps and chests on the bare floor. These collections were in piles as much as they were separated from one another. This room has for some time been used as storage for many pieces for which the household no longer has use, yet no one wishes to remove from the premises, said Sir Glendon. There is a skirt on a hanger, said I. Yes, said Sir Glendon. As I mentioned, I came up here and, after finding the cases, I opened them, took out the shift and hung it, and placed the cases in this cabinet. Naturally, the shift must stay hanging for a day or 2 before being replaced into the case. It was still damp when I opened the travelling chests, but otherwise the wings and the ewer are in their respective places in their cases in here. He pointed to a cabinet. Here is the key, Mr. Holmes. I fished it from its hiding place as we walked up here. It is a good place, and I wish to continue its use, and therefore will keep its location a secret. And you now understand only Sir Richmond, or I, could have opened this cabinet. Well then, said Holmes, let us see inside of the cases. Sir Glendon used his key and opened both doors of the cabinet. Michaels, along with the assistance of Weller, pulled the cases from inside of the closet and put them on the floor. The larger case was opened, and before us were the feathery and structured wings. They were held in the case by leather ties, such that were the case stood up, they would not be jarred from their standing position within the case. They were impressive and beautiful. This apparatus is very old, commented Holmes. Oh, yes, Mr. Holmes, stated Sir Glendon. I could engage an expert, as there are such men at the British Museum, who could place the time of their making. But for what purpose? They are only used once each year. And will this chore fall to you now? Holmes asked the new baronet. Naturally, Mr. Holmes. The men closed the case, and it was set aside. Here, gentlemen, I ask you to use some care, Holmes told the servants. Together Weller and Michaels opened the square case, showing inside the large and brilliantly painted picture and a small gold box. The contents of the gold box is, I presume, the jewelled necklace and the matching piece, worn like a belt of some kind, stated Holmes. Sir, that would be so, answered Michaels. But, Mr. Holmes, the box is empty, said Sir Glendon. It is merely used to transport the jewels. It does not and should not contain them. And the jewels are where, then? Asked Holmes. I do not know, Mr. Holmes. It is the one matter to which my nephew did not share with me. What if I were to tell you the jewels were caged? Holmes asked the baronet, presumptive. Yes, that comment had been made by Sir Richmond. He used to play with me, allowing me to search the birdcage to see whether I could discover them. He enjoyed his little game, as he would wonder at me as I hunted in the cage for them. I never found them. Would there be any chance they would be stored in the silver closet? Certainly not, sir, replied Weller. I know the inventory therein perfectly. Every piece is naturally written on a list inside that cabinet. I have memorized the list and know the exact location of where each item is kept within the closet. There are no jewels inside of that closet. Sir Glendon lifted the box from below the ewer, which had been strapped to the inside of the box, and carefully opened it. All 3 sides lifted away easily, as it was a hinged box, one where the cover could not be separated from the box itself. No jewels were contained therein. Mr. Michaels, why not unstrap those there? Mr. Weller, if you will please hold down on the case. The large picture was removed, and its cobalt hue made a strong statement before us. Holmes took it from the hands of Michaels and lifted it, hefting it in his grasp. "It is not too heavy, Watson," he said to me. Sir Glendon spoke to my friend as he held the ewer. "It could not be too heavy, Mr. Holmes. The legend behind its creation is that it was made for the water ceremony and for a woman to be able to lift it. Though I suppose it would depend upon the strength and determination of the woman holding it. But regardless, most any woman could pour a flow of water from it into the mouth of someone positioned below." The baronet smiled at Holmes, who turned it over before us. There for all to see was a magnificent painting of an eye, also of cobalt, surrounded by a violet hue. Here and there were touches of green and black. The eye was large and made a foreboding statement. Holmes took from his coat a wrapped cloth, and using this he carefully wiped the inside of the great picture, looking afterward at the piece of material within his palm. "You will witness, Sir Glendon, Mr. Weller, Mr. Michaels, I took a sample of residue, if there is any such thing, from an imaginary width equal to behind where the eye has been painted. Should the official detectives come calling and want such a similar piece of evidence gathering, please alert them to what I have done and the area where I have done so." There came nods of confirmation from all three of the men, who understood that for a moment Sherlock Holmes was addressing each one of them as men who may have to, in the future, verify something to one representing the law. Together, Holmes and Michaels returned the ewer to its place within the case, and Michaels strapped the piece into it, finally cinching it into its seated position. "Are we concluded our work now, Mr. Holmes? Our household should prepare for a number of condolence calls and other business related to our hours of sorrow." "Yes, you have been very kind and indulgent with my requests, but I believe some of my trespass during your time of sadness will be justified, should the assistance of Inspector Hopkins present themselves at your door." "I'm certain you will be shown correct in that score," he said, as Weller led us back to first floor and its magnificent gallery. We were about to take the grand staircase to the ground floor when Holmes stopped us all. "We are on the floor of the conservatory, is that not so?" "Yes, of course, Holmes. It is at the end of the gallery. Please show me this room, Sir Glendon." There was a moment's hesitation, but then, without comment, the presumptive baronet led us to two beautifully carved and ornate doors that were opened, and we walked into a magnificent room with chairs that numbered perhaps 40 and matching side tables. We found ourselves in a world of 18th century elegance. Holmes walked to the pianoforte and sat down before it. It was a wondrous instrument to behold. I knew very little about music, but I did have an understanding to appreciate the very idea that Felix Mendelssohn played on it often, and perhaps composed some of his music using it. "This is a full 7 octaves, Holmes said. "Mr. Holmes, I hardly believe this is the time." Sir Glendon's frustration with Holmes prolonging the matter while the home was in mourning was not, at this point, hidden by him. "So you mentioned to me you have searched the birdcage, Sir Glendon. For the jewels, well, naturally I have. They are not there. The cage is rather sparse, and the plant life there is real and without hollows. I have checked. The soil has been turned, the walls have been pushed against, and the floor has been examined. The jewels are not there. What is this about, Holmes?" "The jewels are caged, Sir Glendon. Let us then discover them." Holmes took his right hand and played a partly melodic, partly unattractive chord. The great room sounded its disharmony. C major, certainly, but at the central position, no. Sir Richmond would have had a greater imagination than that, I should think. He played the chord again in a lower octave, then lower still. "Holmes, please end this foolishness." "A higher octave would have been the choice of a craftsman," Holmes said, looking up at us. The 4 of us were looking at one another with incredulity. The same chord was played at a higher octave. "And now for my coda," said Holmes, as he depressed another 5 keys. The sound filled the room, but at the same time there was a clicking noise. A secret slot on the piano's side opened widely, and as we looked to it, we immediately saw the necklace and belt of the most perfect stones, colourful and flawless in every way, and my layman's eye understood as much. Holmes rose. Your nephew possessed quite a genius in his own right when it came to understanding everything there is to know about this instrument. He made this safe of his all by himself, and over time, and some years ago, I suppose. I followed Holmes as he made his way to the doors of the conservatory. He turned and said to Sir Glendon, "The jewels were caged. That is, C-A-G-E-D. Not the happiest of chords, but then this is a tragedy." Part 3. You are and do not know it. This board and my investigations have been no use to our client whatsoever, Watson. Mrs. Hudson entered with a luncheon on her tray. You may give mine to Watson here, who can be hungry at all times. Holmes raised his voice at the landlady. And maybe you'll get no dinner then as well, Mr. Holmes. What am I to do with this case? Its solution moves to every point on the compass, with the exception of true north. Mrs. Hudson, this is delightful. What have you here? Bacon sandwiches, potatoes lyonnaise and applesauce, she answered. I will certainly eat my friend's portion for him. That way he may live vicariously through my enjoying his midday meal. I have 2 hours, Watson, and I am no closer than I was before visiting the Carter estate. The boy from the chemist had come by with a note from Dr. Callister, who stated there was no tell of poison on the swab Holmes had sent to him. He did not take this as the good news I had hoped he would have. There are 2 people who could have had access to the ewer, and one is our client, and the other the man with everything to gain from the death of his departed relation. A positive on the poison from the ewer would at least have narrowed it down to these people, and reason would lead a court to find Sir Glendon was the culprit. But what I am lacking is proof. This fantastic set of circumstances shows the late Sir Richmond Carter returned in some pain but not in fear. He goes upstairs carrying the 2 cases. He makes his way to the piano and locks up the jewels. He travels to the higher floor with the cases in hand, but then drops the cases in the secondary hall, owing to his immediate pain. In this pain, he no longer has any interest in the cases, and makes it to his bedchamber to lay on his bed, where he is gripped by these poisons. He becomes entirely helpless, and his men in service are in the gardens and walking the area of his estate. Whatever noises he makes are moot. He dies. But how can we present evidence that will demonstrate that he had no pains until he was at home, and that until that moment he was quite healthy? Had the poison been placed into one of these other mediums, listed here on the board, he may have felt the pain from such an experience and not have taken it seriously. How can we show that he had no fears until his demise? To separate the man's imbibing the water from Burnham Wood from these other events would require we show his health in relation to time. And what is there to do about the matter of time? How can we tell the time? How can we show when he was last operating within his own volition and calm demeanour? We cannot. We do not own time. It is a mystery to us. Holmes sat up as though he was possessed. He jumped to his feet and paced the room with excitement that moved him to positive joy. He became a child, filled with glee and bordering on crazed madness of pure happiness. Time. Yes, we can make a tell of it. Come, Watson. He opened the door. Mrs. Hudson, a hansom at once. Holmes removed his dressing gown and reached for his coat. Mrs. Hudson, we need a cab, and we need it yesterday. Mr. Holmes, she shouted up from the opened front door below. There is a cab for you here. You do not need to go back in time for it. We shall do precisely that. I followed as he ran down the stairs. Pack up Watson's excellent meal and mind for him to take to his wife. I will be dining out later tonight. You'll be in the lock-up for the crazy persons is what will happen to you. Scotland Yard, Holmes barked at the driver. And driver, you shall be taking us to more than that one destination. Holmes sat during the brief journey as if he were adding things up in his mind. When we arrived, Holmes was just as sharp to the driver as when he entered the carriage. "Wait here." He bolted from the cab and I followed. "Dr. Regatta, good afternoon," said Holmes. "Mr. Holmes, Dr. Watson, good afternoon. Do you have the effects of the late Richmond Carter?" "Naturally, they are here in this drawer. They were to leave with his case this evening, as we have already had word from the family's undertaker." "Please open this drawer, thank you. Doctor, I need to take his watch for a while, only for an hour." "As the case is officially concluded, technically your only matter in this is with the undertaker," stated Regatta. "Do you have the mortician's card?" "Of course, Mr. Holmes. We work with them quite often." Holmes took the card and gave to Regatta the most scant of a thank you. "Watson, where is the nearest venerable store for timepieces?" "Back to St. James Street," I suggested. "I know the perfect shop." We arrived and Holmes told the cabby he had to wait again. The storefront had an air of old-world charm, and case after case of timepieces were on display under glass, held in place by deep and polished cherry-wood frames. There were many rows of pocket watches and several shelves of clocks, but none of these were recently in production. Everything in the shop showed being treated with tender care and solid craftsmanship. "Sir, could you please bring before me a man who knows as much about pocket watches as can be known?" "Yes, that would be my grandfather." He brought before us a man in his 70s. "Sir, I am in immediate need of your assistance, and we can only do this once. Do you recognize this?" "Certainly I do," said the man. "Grinberg and Reichmann. They are of a good, durable quality. They are in Brighton. This is what would have been given to a boy upon his coming of age. I am going to wind this, and I need you to tell me how long it has been since it was previously wound." "I can tell you this with some accuracy, certainly," said the man. Holmes held it to the man's ear and wound it slowly until it stopped. The man thought for a while. "Sir, this watch was last wound at some time between 8 and 9 last night. Close to 8:30 would be a most exact understanding. Would you, if need be able to explain why you say so?" The man laughed. "You do not appear to wish to stay for me to explain to you how I know this to be so." "Very correct, sir. But what I mean is this. Should I ask you to explain why you concluded as you have before a court, could you do so remembering the winding and then being able to give your explanation before a legal authority?" "I could do this, yes. This watch, like all watches, has been made to have a consistent, recognizable series of individual sounds within the winding. I could explain this should a genuine matter of consequence require I do so." "Perfect. Thank you for your help, sir. My name is Sherlock Holmes, and it is probable I will return tomorrow to discuss this with you in some detail." The man's grandson stood nearly in shock. "I look forward to the discussion, Mr. Holmes," said the man. "Good afternoon," said Holmes. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," the man said to us. "Telegraph office," Holmes said to the cabman. Holmes told me to wait as he went in, and after some minutes he came out of the office and told me he had sent a telegraph to Portmandia Manor. "Back to Scotland Yard," said Holmes to the driver. "My investigation is complete, Watson. I am now able to demonstrate Sir Richmond was poisoned when he was poisoned, for I now possess time." "Does that mean you know who our murderer is?" "Of course. It is the only man it could have been. It was the only person with access to the items related to the ceremony. That much was evident from when I understood only Glendon Carter could have got to these items." "But Holmes, the ewer tested negative for any residue of poisons." "Yes, there would have naturally had to have been some in the pitcher, and this was cleaned away after Glendon discovered the cases and before he locked them away." "Then there is no evidence, Holmes." "We shall see about that." Holmes led me from the hansom and released the cabman. Inspector Stanley Hopkins looked up at us from his desk. "What can I do for you, Mr. Holmes? Ahead of us, as usual? Is that your view of this Carter business?" "Why do you say so?" "You have your theory about the pitcher, so I hear. I sent a note to the Carter estate telling them to expect me at 4 this afternoon, and to have this ewer, or pitcher, for me to inspect. And this new presumptive little baron writes me back that you have already examined this piece of ceramic, and would I please not bother him. These Camberwell residents, are they all like this man and your client? Word is that Sir Richmond wasn't afraid to get his hands working and get an occasional callus or two. But he would be the exception, I suspect. All of them using the House of Lords to try and prevent parks from being made and police from coming to their homes. I believe it to be in your best interest, Inspector, to have me with you when you visit the estate. My stating that the matter will leave my interest at today's afternoon is something I promised Miss Genevieve de Lance. What's this then, Holmes? You are up to mischief. Do not think I am a dotard just yet, thank you very much. I am afraid, Inspector, that here I hold all of the trumps, and it is you who must play Caesar's wife in the matter. But you will play square with me? Asked Inspector Hopkins. The arrest shall be yours alone. Holmes assured the man. We'll be arresting the invisible man is what we'll be doing. The baronet gave you the slip, and he gave me the slip. Be of good cheer, Inspector Hopkins. Watson and I will find our own way there. I have another call to make that must come first. Let us meet at 4. We walked a few blocks to St. James Park and found our way to a four-wheeler, and from there we rode to Portmandia Manor. Miss de Lance was standing before her property on its beautiful lawn, with a young man at her side. Into our open carriage they joined us. Jason, this is Mr. Sherlock Holmes and his associate, Dr. Watson. I am pleased to meet you, gentlemen. It is an honour, said the youth. Meeting you is a privilege, Jason, said Holmes. Holmes' instructions to the cabby took us the long way around and past the earthworks that were turning the former strawberry fields into a park to be enjoyed by all of the subjects of the Crown. We passed below the estate and travelled its length, a stone's throw from the Carter property line. So this is the park the city is making? I asked Holmes as we passed large mounds of earth being piled high and low by man and machine. Yes, he said to me, and you can see from here the second story to the mansion that is the Carter estate. There is the window of the conservatory, as will be seen by those who will walk through the park. I looked above and beyond the new park being created and saw the sunlight reflect upon the exterior glass of the great window at the end of the conservatory, a landmark that would become more well known now that the public would be able to come closer to the opening of the land below. However, knowing the Carter family's point of view and that of our client, the cost would be too great a price to pay by their families. Mr. Holmes, Jenny will not say why we are going to the Carter estate to see Cousin Glendon. Our family would be going to the estate this evening as a large group for the bereavement of Cousin Richie. But you have asked Jenny to gather me up for a visit this afternoon. What is amiss? The young lad was in earnest as he asked his question without formality. You are, and do not note. He returned to my friend a more puzzled expression than before. Stanley Hopkins, along with Assistant Inspector Bruce, were at the front door of the Carter estate when we arrived. There was a conversation that had already begun. Weller was being emphatic. It has been requested no person other than family and friends enter, sir, regardless for what purpose. Now you call your master before us and have him deliver that statement to me. I will not bandy words with you. Tell Glendon Carter, Esquire, that he has to make a choice. To either let us enter upon these premises for what will probably be no more than a quarter-hour's time, and before any of your master's people arrive to pay their respects, or I return with a warrant, and probably at what would be the worst possible moment for the family. Weller thought. I will convey your message to Sir Glendon, he said, closing the door before the inspector. Inspector Hopkins, you are on the spot, it would appear, said Holmes. Hopkins turned to us. Just so, Mr. Holmes, have your little jest, but I don't know how you will get past the front door. I'm certain Miss de Lance will be permitted in. And this young man? This, Inspector Hopkins, is Jason Carter. He is a cousin to Mr. Glendon Carter, Esquire. He is something more also. He will certainly be welcome. The door opened. Sir, I am told you are making a threat that if I do not give you entrance to this home, you will return under court authority. Is that so? That is exactly so, Mr. Carter. I have my work to do. On your premises is something related to evidence in the matter of the death of Sir Richmond Carter, 6th Baron, Masterton. I'm certain you know of this item Scotland Yard is interested in inspecting. Has not Mr. Holmes given you a report related to this item? The baronet played his card to the inspector. "I cannot say, sir. Mr. Holmes has been acting independently and in the aid of Miss Genevieve de Lance. While our wires cross occasionally, that does not mean what he gathers as evidence satisfies an official capacity. Miss Ginny—" Mr. Carter was courteous. "Jason." Here he was surprised. He spoke to the inspector. "Why is our family's friend and my relation here in your official capacity for the gathering of evidence?" "That would be something arranged by Mr. Holmes," answered the inspector. Holmes, what is all of this? You are permitted into our home during our grief, and we give you access to our family's tokens related to our sacred ceremony. You have gone beyond the limit of what any private subject could expect from an important family in its worst imaginable moments. Come now, sir, speak to this. You very well know, sir, that I am keeping my promise to you to act in the capacity we agreed upon when first we met," was all that Holmes gave. You play cat and mouse with me, Holmes. You enjoy your moment of levity at my expense, do you? You will find I am not a man to be trifled with under any circumstance, and especially where the name of Carter is concerned. I speak for that name, sir, and I will act against any trespass upon it. Rest assured there, sir." Holmes did not respond to this last, but there was something in his eye. Finally, Holmes said, "Sir, you do not have to give me entrance into your home, that is certain. But know that should you do so, Miss de Lance will be demonstrated to be unconcerned in the death of the late baronet." Glendon Carter thought for a moment. He looked at Miss de Lance, and then at his cousin, then to me, and then to Holmes. "Quarter of an hour," was the blunt invitation to enter, made by the man as he stood back and allowed Weller to open the door fully. "Please take us to where you keep these ceremony items, sir," was Inspector Hopkins' singular direction to our host. "If I might suggest," said I, "would it not be best that Jason Carter stay downstairs during this next while?" "An excellent suggestion, Watson." The baronet sighed. "Yes, that does make sense. Weller, stay downstairs and show Jason to the cakes put out, and bring out for him some punch." "Certainly, sir. Will Michaels be needed?" "No, I will manage things upstairs by myself." Glendon Carter led all of us up the grand staircase. "Tell me, sir, did you decide to continue your uncle's hiding place for the jewels? That remains an impressive safeguard. Do you not agree? Holmes, I am not to be pressed for your gamesmanship at this hour. You shall show to us all your proof Miss Ginny not being involved in the death of Sir Richmond, and then you shall leave us, sir. I believe, sir, that after what I have to show is effected, there will indeed be a mass exodus from the estate." Inspector Hopkins gave Holmes a sideways look. Miss de Lance smiled. Our host continued his movement up the stairs and did not turn around, though for an instant he checked his progress. We climbed the stairs off the gallery and arrived at the room of extra needs we had visited earlier in the day. The cabinet was opened, and the boxes were removed and placed on the floor. "You realize this is a waste of time," said Glendon Carter. "Oh, I agree entirely," said Holmes. The man looked up at him from the floor where he stood over the travelling cartons. "What? What? Then why are we here, Holmes, if not to have the inspector take a moisture sample of the ewer, should there still be any residue? Why are we going through this?" "I could not say. I never asked you to make presentable to us the ewer." "Then what in blazes are we doing here?" "We are here, Mr. Carter, to take a sample of the residue on the lower hem of the shift, still hanging there behind you." The room became a wonder, and our host stood up immediately. "What?" "Yes, Mr. Carter, we are here to pour water over the hem of the shift, wring it out for a sample, and take that sample, along with yourself, to Scotland Yard," said Sherlock Holmes, and he continued in nearly a conciliatory fashion. "You understand, sir, that when you loaded the upper portion of the ewer with your paste of poisons, and designed matters such that one rinsing would release their potency. Owing to the nature of the ritual, some of the poisons gathered in the water at the feet of Miss Genevieve would naturally join with the bottom of her shift. Traces of the poisons now at the lower hem of the skirt would be an amount that would tell. As there are only 2 persons who could have poisoned your nephew in this fashion, and one has no motive whatsoever, you become the only candidate for being the guilty party. It has also been independently corroborated that your nephew was quite healthy, and thought himself so, just before and during his meeting with Miss de Lance. He had to have been poisoned by you alone. I should not need to go on. Any attempt to prolong the obvious would be an absurdity." "Sample nonsense," said Hopkins, looking at the shift hanging at the end of the room. He spoke to Sir Glendon. "I'm taking this with me, and I'm taking you with me as well, sir." "You're mad. You're all mad," the man said with anger in his voice. "Mr. Carter," said Holmes, "do you really wish to attempt to fight off the inspector and Assistant Inspector Bruce and myself and Dr. Watson, the most ferocious of us all? You know you are beaten. You know you are leaving. Will it be with dignity or with a struggle?" All were silent, especially Glendon Carter. "Get that piece of dress there, Bruce," said Hopkins. "We are going to walk in a line to the ground floor. Mr. Lance, you shall leave us and see to the young man, yes?" "Of course," she responded. "Mr. Carter, if you cooperate, it will be only the three of us leaving, and neither Mr. Holmes nor the ferocious Dr. Watson will join with us." The man acquiesced, and before us he was escorted from the room and the estate. We did not follow to imply we were gloating over his entering the inspector's four-wheeler. We had our own carriage on the curtilage of the estate property, and it was to there we walked, leaving the mansion a few minutes after we had heard the door close, knowing the other three had left. It was dusk, and the sun, in its happy statement of a newborn summer, was making a half-hour of golden beauty. The rays made their way into the sitting-room, where Holmes and I were enjoying a pipe. The watch being wound by Sir Richmond. Yes, Watson. That made things conclusive in that, for me, it removed the list of other drink events he had attended. A man who winds his watch is not in pain, nor has any thought of his mortality. It was then I had proof he had been poisoned far later in the day with this time-released paste of poisons prepared by his uncle, and that his drinking at sunset was his demise. What a fiendish and clever adversary! He nearly got away with it. I agree with you there, Watson. He so anticipated the inspection of the ewer and cleaned it out entirely that before us on that point was a cold end. The wings would have no tell, though should the lady have worn a tunic of some kind, a splash or two would have found their way to it. Mr. Glendon was safe on that account, owing to the absence of such a piece of clothing. You are having your jest with me, Holmes. I wonder should I ever write up this exploit of yours, whether I will tell the public the truth or fashion out Mr. Lance with a complete wardrobe, I said to him. Oh, please, Watson, by all means dress her from head to foot and continue your reckless accounts of my adventures, nearly all of them filled with white lies and minor deceptions. Holmes chuckled for a while until we were disturbed by Mrs. Hudson, who brought into the room a small sack with 2 sealed letters attached to it. On the cover of one of the envelopes was the name Sherlock Holmes, while on the other was mine. Inside of each was a single card made from the most handsome and expensive paper. On it, reading in an elegant script, Miss Genevieve de Lance requests the honour of your company for afternoon tea to celebrate Jason Carter, Esquire. Friday, the 24th of June. At 4 o'clock, Portmandia Manor, Camberwell. Holmes walked over to the dining table and unwound the cord of the small dark blue satin sack and let its contents fall out from inside of it. 100 George III spade guineas cascaded onto the table in a golden shower.